Item 10B, adopt a resolution increasing the construction budget for the 2015 street rehabilitation project by $515,800 and appropriating $257,900 from Measure A and $257,900 from gas tax funds due to unforeseen site conditions and change orders.
Good evening, honorable mayors and members of the City Council. City street rehab program involves the repair, replacement, and preventive maintenance of local collector and arterial streets. The overall goal of the program is to provide the highest quality network of pavement possible by ensuring the city's roads are maintained in a safe and drivable condition for everyone to enjoy. The item in front of you tonight is in regards to the 2015 street rehab project, which was awarded to council back in June of 2015 to Gallagher & Burke. Excuse me. Staff is currently requesting an increase in construction budget to be used to pay for unforeseen site conditions change orders that were encountered during construction. As part of the project, a total of 18 street segments were identified to be rehab and reconstructed. The scope of work consists of repaving the roadway surface with asphalt, overlay, slurry seals, rubber cape seals, performing base repair of failed pavement structures, and installing accessible curb ramps and new traffic stripings. The notice to proceed was issued to the contractor back in September of 2015, and the project was divided into two phases. The first phase of the streets are shown on this slide, consisting of reconstructed using mill and fill and overlay treatments. And the second phase was for the remaining street segments that required the application of slurry and rubber cape seals treatments. The reason for two phases was that since the construction was close to winter months, the slurry and cape seal treatment couldn't be performed since it requires optimal temperature and weather conditions. And the contractor focused on completing the street segments in the first phase. And during the construction of San Diego Avenue, the contractor encountered soft and oversaturated subgrade soil along the majority of the street segments. Staff discussed the issue with the pavement technical consultant, NCE, formerly known as Nichols Consulting Engineers, to determine the mitigation measure. NCE is the consultant the city has previously used to obtain technical assistance and pavement treatment recommendations for the project. NCE recommended the existing subgrade to be excavated, which is shown on the slide, and replaced with more stable aggregate surface and placing dual fabric between existing and new subgrade materials. And this picture of San Diego Avenue shows the dual fabric material that's in place and a new aggregate subgrade that's just right underneath the bottom left-hand corner. This picture also shows the aggregate subgrade being compacted along San Diego Avenue.
Can I interrupt you for a second? What was planned for that stretch? What was originally planned?
It was the mill and fill.
In comparison to 18 inches of excavation?
Correct.
I know, don't talk streets to me, please.
I'm sorry.
What was going to, if we didn't encounter a problem or anything, what would the condition be? How would the street be improved?
If we didn't encounter the problem, the street would be removal of the recommendations are to remove of the 5 inches of AC and a replacement of 5-inch AC. Staff encountered similar oversaturated soil situation at the 700 block of Chestnut Avenue, where the new subgrade material was also brought in. Here's some pictures of Chestnut Avenue here, where excavation is being performed. There's another picture here that shows the geofabric material being installed along, on the existing subgrade, and this last picture shows the aggregate material being brought in and will be spread to compact. Since the existing subgrade conditions were unknown, the additional mitigation work was not included in the original bid, and the situation was considered an unforeseen condition, which required issuance of a change order to Gallagher & Burke. The change orders for the additional out-of-scope work totals $515,800, and staff is requesting an additional appropriation to cover these unforeseen change orders. Although there is a contingency in the amount of $325,600 available from the original authorization of the paving contract, staff is recommending to keep the contingency in case of other unforeseen site conditions, which we may encounter or we may not during the remaining of the work, and so we can avoid coming back to council at a later time. And staff is coordinating with the contractor to complete the remaining slurry seal streets, which are here, and the rubber cape seal segments, as shown in the slide. And staff anticipates the construction of these streets will be completed by December of 2016. The schedule of this project has been extended due to unfavorable construction weather during the winter months and due to El Nino as well. So as for fiscal impact, staff is requesting an appropriation of $257,900 from Measure A and the same amount from gas tech funds to cover the cost of these change orders. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff at this time? Or action by the council? Okay, go ahead.
Was patiently waiting. I thought somebody might have another question, Ken. So the change orders, that was done on a time and material basis, or was it a lump sum change order? What was the square foot charge that, or how did you guys come up with those numbers?
It was on a time and materials basis. I don't have the exact cost information with me right now, and that's something that I can provide if you're interested in seeing for the actual labor rates and materials and so forth. So I don't have the breakdown of that number.
Okay, understood. And you could get a breakdown on how many square foot that each segment that were required on Chestnut and on San Diego.
That's correct.
Okay. So as an inspector, I've dealt with this problem before in San Bruno. And in fact, it's something hopefully we're going to learn from, how we can maybe put that as a bid item, as a contingency item, and it could be just dropped off. If they don't encounter that material, then we don't have to have that item paid there. But I think they kind of got us when it comes down to that point when we're already milling. And mill and fill is basically you grind out the old asphalt and you lay new asphalt on top, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just for the public that doesn't know what mill and fill might be, you know. What do you suggest we do for the many other streets that we're going to be paving, not with phase 2, but in the future of maybe taking some borings or doing some, doing like test pits, or what suggestion do you have in mind?
And we consulted with NCE. We came to council a while back to award a contract to NCE to provide this technical assistance. So they went out to these streets and they did corings. And unfortunately, you know, with these soft subgrade locations, sometimes the location where they core may not be soft. So majority of the locations that we encountered were closer to the curb, you know, the gutter
Right.
side. Perhaps maybe we can take more additional samples for future projects so that we'll have a better understanding of the actual condition.
And would you say that this is just an example of when a street is allowed to deteriorate to a certain point, where now in phase 2 we're doing the preventive type of treatments where you're sealing things, that we're likely going to see this occur many times as we go and fix the older streets in that part of the neighborhood. And what I'm trying to say is, you know, how do we anticipate that and start planning for that better? And it's pretty common to fix is that you over excavate the mucky, soft, wet material, you lay a geofabric down, and then you fill in base rock on top of that. It's a very common, a good fix. And I don't know how much more that we're going to get out of getting a consultant to tell us that, but utilizing our staff and some of their expertise and just learning from this experience of how we can do that. The last thing I'd like to say is, when I was an inspector here, I was always frustrated about how the paving projects would come in winter, and how we're trying to, you know, fight the rain and trying to get a street paved, and it's like I would like to see a moratorium during the winter months and look at doing these paving projects in like later spring and like ending up to like mid-October instead of this project started when?
September.
September. So we're setting ourselves up when we do projects like this. The other thing is to increase the contingency for these segments, I would think that we wouldn't have to increase it that much because we're not going to be excavating here. We're going to be primarily laying slurry seal down, which is just a mixture of sand and oil. And the Cape Seal, I haven't done one of those yet either, but it's still not excavating and messing with the surface of the street. So we shouldn't see any large problem like we did for phase 2. But thank you very much.
So if I could just add, I hope it's clear that the project contingency is being protected in the recommendation that staff is making in order to avoid having to come back to you again or having any potential of coming back to you again. We agree with your assessment that the likelihood of certainly this kind of difficulty is not going to be experienced in the second part, although we are doing some digging up on Amador, and so that's going on right now. So there is the potential of some need for the contingency, but in no case is the contingency used unless it's necessary. So we're protecting it in order that we can get to the end of this project, but that doesn't mean we're expecting to use it.
No, I understand.
Ben?
Through the chair, what's frustrating here, and just to let you know, I watched the news this morning and watched that sinkhole in San Jose before everyone's eyes, so at least it's not that. But what's frustrating is that being on the subcommittee and trying to stay, keep up with the deterioration of our roads and have something like this, not to say that it wasn't there and did we know about it or we didn't know about it, it still costs to do it. But that's a big chunk of money. That could have fixed a lot more. That's almost an allocation, an annual allocation from the Measure A fund. So I just want to be sure that, and then you say that NCE came out, but NCE didn't know anything about it. I want us to be sure that we've done everything we can to make sure that we don't have a surprise like this at the earliest stage, so that we can either plan for it or maybe, adjust what streets we do, because that it's a lot of money that might have to be adjusted in fixing another street. But I want to be sure that that we've tested it, and hopefully there's something out there that can assure us that we're not going to have another $500,000 hit or something. So.
It's tough. Once you open that up, Jim, it's over. Like we did 7th Avenue, and we had to stabilize it and just it's pretty much cement, and we have it's filled, it's been mushed around. Once you touch it, it's over. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, anything else?
Sorry.
Rico?
I was waiting, so somebody's got to say something.
So I was asking the director whether, I hope it's clear that we hired NCE specifically to deal with the questions that you're raising. And we did potholing in order to try and evaluate and anticipate what kind of soil deficiencies might exist. And I was just asking the director if it was correct that we did know that there was some amount of soft soils. He's telling me something technical that I don't understand exactly, but the short statement is that we do the due diligence up front. Potentially we could do more. Potentially we could include contingency or consideration. We could craft the bid documents differently, and we'll look at all of those opportunities because we're just as concerned as you are that the needs far outreach the available resources in our community. And as you know, we have many, many streets that are still waiting to have, are needing rehabilitation and are going to, we can't just overlay all of our streets. We have too many streets that are not in an acceptable condition that we will have to do this kind of work going forward. And we certainly want to avoid these kinds of surprises whenever we can.
If I could add to that, that's great, because the staff report, when you read the staff report, it acts as if we reacted, we were surprised, and that, you called on NCE to come out and they made the recommendation. So that's, it doesn't soften the, the financial hit, but at least we know that you're investigating it. I'm looking at phase 2 also, and I'm in the neighborhood where going to get some slurries, but it's been possibly a year, 9 months, where a lot of the cracks have been sealed, tar sealed or something. I mean, is that still good, or was that an anticipation of a slurry? And then, can you give me an update on why that was done, so long ago?
Yeah, so the contractor, subcontractor came out and did the crack sealing of all the slurry seal streets, and they did that towards the end of last year, I believe. And that's something that we would have to go back out there and determine whether it's still, adequate prior to before the slurry seal is applied.
Okay, Rachel?
Sure. I think between two of my colleagues, they've asked a lot of the questions. This is just general on 2 topics. One is when we are doing the streets, and I know the staff is aware now, but on Amador, the street signs were posted. Obviously, that date expired. So when we contract with these folks, whomever they are, now or in the future, I'd like them to be cognizant of when we're notifying the public. It's going to be happening during this time window. The reason I found out is because I happened to run into that resident in Los Altos Hills by all account and was, hey, by the way, while you're here, can I ask you this? We didn't know. So when we award a bid, my expectation would be that they follow through. And if it's going to be delayed, that it be notified and it be done in a timely fashion. I think the residents and the neighbors deserve that. That's the first thing. Second thing is, when we do have these reports come up, when we're talking about the phases, and again, it's up to my colleagues, I'm only one vote, but I'd like to see in our reports going forward, as I've asked before, just when we last did what work we did and when we last did the work on that street. Okay, because we always get questions, and again, I'll open it to my colleagues. If 3 of us don't feel that, then it's okay, I'll stop saying it. But I think when I get asked a question, I'd like to be able to reference it.
Okay. Anyone else? Action on item B?
I hate to do it, but I'll adopt the resolution.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.